Alright, we're doing a common rail injector install for an 06 Dodge today. Customers complaining of high EGTs. Truck had over 100,000 miles on it, so we probably got some ball seat erosion issues. So we're going to put brand new Robert Bosch injectors in. We're going to go through the steps to take out and reinstall common rail injectors. We're going to start with the first step in the entire process, which is removing the fuel rail. Here at Thoroughbreds, we remove the fuel rail in one complete pack. We don't remove any lines or anything from the fuel rail itself. We'll actually take it all out in one pack. This is the head side of the injectors. At the actual head and the injector, you just loosen these up, remove them from the injectors. You've got hold down clamps here all the way down the rail holding it to the intake manifold. Then there's 3 bolts here, here, and here that hold the rail itself to the head. Remove the fuel feed line coming from the CP3 that's on the bottom side of this, the overflow valve. Undo your electrical connectors, and this will come out in one shot off the head. Then once we're at the head, we need to remove the feed tubes. At each feed tube on the common rail head, there's a retaining nut that holds the feed tube in. That's this here. And then you have the feed tube itself, which is here. We'll show you how to remove it. To remove the feed tubes, we use a Snap-on J149. You can get from any Snap-on dealer. Just screw that onto the feed tube, like so. Off just a little bit, and then just simply use a pry bar or a screwdriver and pry like that. And there we go, voila. Let the feed tubes come right out. Feed tubes have got 2 ball bearings on them. There's a channel cut in the head, so reinstallation, what we do is we'll just line that up by turning the feed tube side to side. That'll let us find our groove, and then push the feed tube back inside the head. Alright, next we're going to go for the valve cover. Once we have the valve cover off, we'll show you guys where we're at. The next step in common rail injector removal is taking off the valve cover gasket. The common rail Cummins valve cover gasket is an integrated circuit. It's got all the wires running through it, going to each individual injector. 2 nuts on top of the injector. We'll do that for all 6 injectors, and then we're going to remove the valve cover gasket and go for the exhaust rocker arms, which is the longer of the 2 rocker arms. We'll remove those, and that'll give us access to our injectors. Alright, we've got our exhaust rocker arms off now. We're ready to remove the injectors. To remove the injectors, we take the valve bridge off each exhaust valve, and then you have 2 bolts here and here, metric 8s, and we're going to remove those. And then from this side of the injector, we'll get a prise tool underneath here, right at the hold down, the injector hold down here, and use that to prise the injector out of the bore. Do that for all 6 cylinders. These are our brand new Robert Bosch 505 injectors. We call them a 505. The Bosch number is 0986435 for the 04.5 to 07.59s with the 325 horsepower motor in it. Before we install these, we'll put a little bit of petroleum jelly around this O-ring right here, and then we'll go ahead and place them in the head. Alright, putting the injectors in the head, one of the biggest things that you want to do is make sure that you've got the feed hole of the injector pointed towards where the feed tube is going into the head, which will be the driver's side. So we'll take the injector, we've got our petroleum jelly on it, ready to go in the bore. Make sure nothing's in the bore of the feed hole, and we'll orient it towards that feed tube on the head. Okay, we'll get her seated like this. Top of the head, the electronics, take a rag, double it over so you've got a good soft cushion, and just simply push. It'll click like that, just that easily, and the injector is in. One of the easiest ways to know whether you've got the injector seated and seated right is you can go back and put your feed tubes back in the head. and you can wiggle the injector, and if the feed tube is in there right, when you wiggle it, you won't have very much play at all, just a little bit, and you'll also see the feed tubes wiggle. So we're going to put our other 6 injectors in, and then we're going to put the feed tubes in and kind of show you what we're talking about there. All right, we've got our injectors back in. Haven't put our bolts in yet because we want to show you how we do on the feed tubes here. With the feed tubes, again, you'll want to have the ball bearings up, and then they'll go in the groove here in the head. And when you start them in the head, you can kind of turn them left to right, just like this right here, and that lets you show that you got the bearing in the groove. So that's right there. Just take a blunt end of any tool here. We go back with the same tool that we actually removed it, just to protect the threads on it. Feed it on 2 or 3 turns. And pop the feed tube back in. Remove the installation tool or the removal tool. Okay. Now, here's the true test to see whether you've gotten the injectors and the feed tubes lined up here. Alright, we're going to take the head of the injector and move it, and we should see movement out of this feed tube right here. Alright, work the injector back and forth. Feed tube's moving. So we've got positive engagement of the feed tube into the injector. We'll put our nuts back on here, tighten everything back down. Valve bridges, the exhaust valves. Run the overhead back on the motor. Check for valve clearance, and we're right there where we want to be. We'll be putting the valve cover back on and putting all the electronics back on. Make sure you run your torques on everything here. Injector hold down bolts, the rocker arm bolts. Make sure you go back through your overhead on the motor. Check your intake and your exhaust valve clearances, and that's going to be it. Installation is reverse of removal.